Test 1 2. Test 1 2 3 4. Test.
Test. I'm there.
To call this meeting to order. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Ted Martin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. Lord, we thank you for the visitors that come, the businesses that operate, and the folks that staff those businesses. Father, we bring you or invite you into these chambers tonight as we lift up this agenda, that the words that are discussed be honoring to you and glorifying for this city as well as we try to move forward as a community that is a city on the hill that loves you and praises you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Denham. Here. Gaines.
Here.
Cooper. Milton.
Here.
Fenton.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if I could. That's where she told me to do it.
Okay, I know there's several people in the audience here for the TCD appointments, and that's at the end of the meeting. I'd like to I'd like to hear a motion to postpone.
Yes, sir, I would make a motion to remove the TCD appointments from the agenda tonight. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Ayes have it.
Thank you, sir.
We'll have this on the next agenda item. Next meeting. Maybe the first agenda item of the next meeting, maybe the last. At this time, I would like to proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2021 as Constitution Week, and I have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas September 17th, 2021 marks 234th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. And now, therefore, I, Larry Milton, Mayor of the City of Branson, Missouri, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. In testimony thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed to the seal of the city of Branson in the state of Missouri on this 24th day of August, 2021. Thank you. This is the public comment section of our meeting. At this time, the board will hear citizens who have signed up in the order they were listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Doug Clark, 121 St. Andrews Street, Branson. He's speaking on per test revision and intercept Foia documents.
Okay. I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. We're in current being stirred up again for the increased cases from the COVID. And when I come up here, I bring documentation with this. This is the CDC notification on July the 21st that they're going to change the PCR test starting in December, okay? If you read the fine print here and you mumble your way down through what they're really telling you, is that they can't tell the difference between the flu on this PCR test and the COVID. So they have made the edict to put out the information for people that are doing this testing that that's not going to work. So my question would be, I think anybody else who's here would be, okay, what are they going to do between July and December? Still use the old test that apparently doesn't test anything? gives you a concrete idea whether you actually have a case or not. Most of them are asymptomatic from this test, because the test was designed by a guy that used it as a scientific tool, had nothing to do with diagnosing diseases. His name was Kerry Mullis. And I would invite anybody here to look that name up and see why that's pertinent. Now, the second thing I want to bring up here, as you know, in Australia and New Zealand and Canada and England, they're being very draconian with their citizens, and they are in the process of fining people for coming out of their houses. They have very few cases that are actually cases of COVID over in Australia anyway, but the police are being terribly abusive to the people, you know? And if you can watch that, and I would invite you to look it up on BitChute or something like that and see the pictures of what's going on there as far as what the people are having to put up with basically a dictator that's running Australia. It's pretty sickening to watch, you know. And so the people that are having this done to them weren't criminals at all before the COVID showed up and the manipulation of the data on the cases and so forth, until the administrators of the health departments and stuff got wind that they have a little bit of power, and then all of a sudden it becomes a real abusive situation. You know, I don't know what they're going to do over there, but it's not good. The third thing here, and I'm not going to bore you with all the contents of these, but this is a FOIA request document that came out of the Intercept. It's like a news source, and they requested it, I think, a year ago, and finally they gave it to them. And what it is the grants, the research material for what Fauci and his little group of merrymakers are doing in these bio labs around the country and around the world. It's not just our country. It's in China, it's in India. We have like 40 or 50 of these research labs where they're combining animal and human DNA on coronaviruses and coming out with what they call a chimeric combination of that, and that's what's dangerous about what we're dealing with here. You know, you can go in here and read this, and it'd scare you half out of your wits if you took the time to read it. And my question is, why is nobody paying attention to this? This has been out there, the basic material, not these documents here, but a lot of stuff from the NIAID and the Fauci's group and the NIH. They have to publish, when they give a grant to a university for coronavirus research or whatever they're doing, the person that applies for the grant has to state what he's going to do, just like a grant for anything else. And so this is like $14 billion worth of this dangerous research that these people are doing all over the world, and we're funding it out of our government. Fauci is the one that's pushing this money out everywhere. And when they got here doing stuff that was dangerous, it was against the law because of the bioterrorism treaty that was signed in 1990. We were a signatory of it, and they got caught doing that after that was signed. A gentleman by the name of Boyle, that's a professor at the University of Chicago, watches this stuff because he was the one that wrote this treaty, and it violates not only the Nuremberg trial, but this treaty for any of these people to be doing this dangerous research on recombinant viruses.
30 seconds.
Seriously dangerous. Now, the third thing here, we have the mechanics of the lockdowns just like they're going to try to do in Australia. And same place CDC puts them out, comes in through the World Health Organization. And if you don't think it's in here bubbling up from underneath, you're in delusion. You know, they passed this, all this stuff is distributed out to all the health agencies, the hospitals. And if we don't do something here, we're going to have the vaccine passports. You're going to have an app you have to put on your phone. You'll have 5 days to put it on there like they're doing it in Australia. If you don't have it on there, they're going to come around and check because that's the law in Australia, okay? And if you are testing positive, you're in your home and you're locked down with an ankle bracelet and you can't go out 5 miles outside your house. On a very minimal, on a comparison, they have less COVID cases, quote, than they do here in the Branson area. And they're doing all that draconian stuff to their own citizens there. It's really appalling to me, and I mean, I can't, I'm at a point where it's like, you know, why isn't this more of an important thing is because it's all being censored in most of the cases, you know?
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you.
Our next speaker is Amber Thompson, 113 North Sunshine Street, Branson, mandating police reform.
Hello, I'm so glad I followed him in speaking tonight. Again, I started the Civil Defense Coalition years ago with absolute zero support from my community or from the state or any of the communities that I reached out to. And the number one reason why I believe that police reform has to be a committee, and this council, I would like to know with a raise of hands, how many people would be interested in a reformation of the police for the reason of protecting not only the citizens, but also the policemen? Would anybody be interested in that, having a committee? Is anyone in the audience interested in having police reform in this town, or just set as an example? So there's zero people
Amber.
in this community.
Yeah, this time is spent for you to address us, and then at the end of your 5 minutes, then if an alderman has a question, they'll readdress you.
Okay. Well, the reason it's so important, and the reason why we're not going to get any defense, okay, and I do have some time there, 4 minutes, is the fact that, again, people are following what they call, or in sociology, the honor culture, where they place certain people in society as idols above common citizen rights. That includes policemen, that includes doctors, that includes potentially a mayor. That's why I'm pushing for more female policemen, because females as a whole have been treated by misogynists beneath par, really. And we have a lot of entrapment calls that still go on in this town. And it could happen to you, Larry Milton. That's why it's very important for you to set up this committee. We can include civil rights issues as well. What happens is you'll have an entrapment call where someone knocks on your door or doesn't even talk to you, but calls a policeman, and two policemen, one to protect the other, will show up at your door. Okay. Now, whoever they're sending it to, I wouldn't be scared to show up at your door if I was the female policeman showing up. But there are a lot of people who are very dangerous to be coming to the door. So my goal, number one, is not only to mandate that they no longer allow policemen to be psychiatrists and write up individuals who are citizens who many times are the victims as mentally insane. I've seen where they put 5 different mental health diagnoses on a female victim. And that's why until we reform the police, until we give females higher places in authoritative positions in society, we will continue to see the mass number of women, mass number of minority within the mental homes and mental institutions, females. Now, in follow-up of the man that just spoke, in order to prevent enforced mandates of masks, and remind you, Larry, that's how you got in office. And that's how we got Ruth Denham in office, was we were all as a whole pushing for civil rights defense. So if you don't create a civil rights defense committee, there will be individuals like myself who will stand outside City Hall and rally with their megaphones and press on until we let go of this honoring and just backing the blue period. Because what it's going to lead to is forced masks, forced vaccinations, and forced flesh implants, which are, in my opinion, completely illegal and a form of physical assault. I am running for senator, as a reminder. I would go through my whole entire agenda here to help make this city safer. But my goal, again, is to get people in mind. I can think of some myself right now who could be on a committee, take the weight off every single person that's here's shoulders, who can meet and discuss these civil rights issues. So we can keep, because I will not tolerate, again, not having a committee on that. Because number one, this is a safe committee area. There's very low crime, and it would be a good time to put pilot programs together, and it would prevent false arrest. And I won't tolerate another policeman getting killed by having to show up on an entrapment call. My goal is to get those policemen to interview the person who called on you, in particular, let's say they called on you, to make some fake arrest on you. Have the policeman have to find out who the caller was, and the person who called in on you yourself should have, the person who's called on should have the name and the number of that person. If that person's stalking you and creating a false arrest on you, you should know who that person is. If they know where you live, you should know where they live. Okay? There's a reason why they have systems in place With the
30
criminal.
seconds.
Thank you. With criminal law, I'm friends with a lot of these people who are politicians, criminal attorneys, and I do know they want to continue the fake false arrests because they make money off of it. So again, as a senator, when you get down to bottom line, if you take away federal funding from that and put it in the place of civil rights attorneys and medical defense attorneys, you don't have so many false arrests. And there, by the way, is a very low amount of attorneys in the state of Missouri. There are tons of cases waiting on
Time
hold.
is up.
Thank you for your time, but really consider having, again, some sort of committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. I'll speak as the mayor, and I believe the board when I say that I admire and respect our police department. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
That's all of our speakers.
Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member in the audience would like to have moved down from the consent to ask additional questions or comments? Any items on the board would like to move down? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the... Go. So this belongs to you? Well, whoever, oh, you want a picture also? Excuse me just a minute.
Now you're making him swell his head up. The picture made. Here he is. Yeah. Thank you for coming out. We're sorry we overlooked you.
Yes, my apologies also. So, Madam Clerk, would you read the items on the consent agenda, please?
Just to clarify, we had nothing to be brought down. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the August 24th, 2021 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of the Advisory Part Board minutes for the June 15th, 2021 meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Human Resources Committee minutes for the July 21st, 2021 and August 3rd, 2021 meetings. Final reading of Bill Number 6046, an ordinance amending Chapter 94 zoning and Appendix A fees of the Branson Municipal Code. Your Honor, that concludes the reading consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
We have a first and second. Time to vote.
Chad, she's going to need some help. That's good. Did you get it? Hey, hey. Did it register?
Your Honor, the vote carries 5-0.
Excuse me.
Thank you. So we're on regular agenda item number 5.
Your Honor, the next item is a discussion of spring and fall cleanup.
We'll begin with a staff report from Keith Francis.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I'm here to just give you an update on our spring and fall cleanup and what we've done in the past and what we're going to do in the future. In the past, we usually take approximately 2 weeks to do the spring and fall cleanup. The first week, we'll go around and pick up the old appliances, mattresses, whatever people set out by the curb. Second week, we usually do the brush and limbs pickup. And up until last year, when the COVID hit, we had a 2-day cleanup. We had it stationed out at Cooper Creek wastewater plant. And then when it got real bad, we knocked it down to 1-day drop-off on a Saturday. When we done the spring and fall cleanup before, when the city crews went around to pick it up with the backhoes, dump trucks, and things like that, the bad part is it took our crews off our street maintenance and sidewalk work for a good 2 weeks. We just had to basically shut everything down. That ended up costing us approximately $39,870 for staff time and dump fees and everything else at the transfer station. The 2-day drop-off, we overestimated what we was going to get, and we had a few extra dumpsters we probably shouldn't have, ordered to have dropped off, and that was around $6,700. When we done the 1-day drop-off on a Saturday, our costs were approximately $2,000, give or take a little. I think it was a little less, but anyway, with all these processes, there are private companies out there that do this, but we're here to listen to you all, and whatever you all direct us to do is which way we'll run with this right now. So, be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keith. Any members in the audience like to address this? Any members of the board?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just have a question, Mr. Francis. I met with the HOA for Fall Creek RV Resorts, and they asked if this goes through to where there's not a pickup, if they could actually, pay, if there's going to be an option for people that cannot make it to, they don't have a truck or they have no way of getting their trash out, so they're willing to pay. Didn't know if that was an option, so I just thought I'd bring it up for.
Pay the city, you mean, or
Yes.
what?
If there's a fee or something, the city, yeah.
No, we've never done that in the past, I'm not saying we couldn't, but we've never done that method in the past before.
Okay. As I said, limbs won't fit in the Volkswagen. They have no
Yeah,
way of
yeah, I
bringing,
can
so
imagine that.
I said,
Yeah.
okay, I'll ask, I'll put it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a couple calls on this too this week. The issue, even if you set the dumpsters at Cooper Creek, then sort of like what Ruth was saying, that some people can't get the stuff into a truck, much less drive it down there and throw it in the, but I think we had people stationed there, didn't we, to help them?
Yes, yes.
Load the
We usually
dumpsters.
have a couple guys out there unloading, maybe 2 guys, and one guy operating the backhoe to load the dumpsters then once they dump it out on the ground.
Right, and then on the other hand, sort of the same problem where people can't get it from the house to the curb, and then wait for the pickup, so there's,
We don't go past the right-of-way line
Right,
as a
right.
norm. Yeah, just for liability purposes and issues.
so what is the origination of this program? How long have we been doing it?
Oh, wow, years and years. Cheryl's been here a lot longer than I have, so I'm guessing 20-plus years. Yeah, at least.
So basically, what we would do before the COVID 2020 was have your guys run around, which was probably everybody. I
Yeah,
mean,
the full
most trucks,
staff.
dump trucks,
Full staff, yep.
right, to do that for limbs and then trash.
Yep.
So, there's not a lot in between the drop-off and
Correct.
and the 2 days. And,
Yep.
yeah, I don't see us third-partying it and coming up with a budget and
No.
say, we'll
No,
pay for this much, so.
no.
What I've heard from the community is similar, and the examples were putting an appliance in a sedan, right? So bottom line is, we've been doing the pickup for give or take 20 years. I know last year we changed it to the drop-off, and so this is up in front of the board to ask the question, do we want to continue with the drop-off or
Go back to our old
go back to the
methods.
spring and fall pickup?
Yes, sir,
And the difference to our budget looks about 33,000, if I'm not
approximately,
mistaken.
yeah. I mean, we're paying our guys anyway, to be at work and everything. The bad part is it just takes us away from our street maintenance. And we've got a lot of projects lined up right now. But it's up to you all, whichever one you direct us to do is the way we'll run.
Where are you at on staffing right now? Are you understaffed,
Let's
overstaffed?
see. We're still down one guy that we're looking to replace that person, you know, on our street department. But we still got half of them doing on the mow crew. And then I've got 4 or 5 guys, usually it's there, but some of them's not on vacation, you know, on the street part. But we did just bid our mowing out to a third party, so that's gonna help us tremendously. The end of this year, you know, our mowing program, and then next year. Oh, I'm sorry. And, but anyway, when we just bid our mowing program out to a third party for a private company to do our mowing, that way I can put all my street guys back in the street department and have a full street crew again, which is a blessing. We've just been so shorthanded, you know, this last year with COVID and everything else. But we've got through it. Everybody pulled together, and sometimes we had to juggle a few things, and things didn't get done quite as quick as we would like, but, you know, we got it done. We done. So.
Mayor,
Sure.
I'm hearing less of limbs and stuff because our storms weren't as bad to blow them down as much. But just a couple of questions. What is Taney County going to be doing? I did notice that they made some sort of thing that went out in the paper online that they're going to have a collection thing, and it's.
They do it just like we done the last couple of years. They have a drop-off point over there that they bring in dumpsters. I mean, they'll load out 10 or 12 dumpsters easily. They have a big turnout for theirs.
What I got a lot of the questions were about was quite remarkable, and it was electronics, computer screens, TV sets, older TV sets. And I've seen some places in people's garages, they're just stacked up, and they want to know what to do with it, and I don't know.
Yeah, and we've got phone numbers on our ad list when we put the news release out for people to call and take them to, stuff like, because we don't take things like that.
Would they have to go out to the Taney County dump itself, or is there
No,
a
there's
electric
businesses, if I remember right, Best Buy is one of them, and there's one in Springfield also, I believe. I think it's still there. It used to be up off Division and National.
What should I tell these people? Because I'm still a little confused. With Best Buy going out, are they going to
Yeah.
be taking anything?
Yes, as soon as we get direction from you all tonight, we're going to get it scheduled in one way or the other, whichever way y'all choose for us to do. And we'll have that information available.
Is the option for us to pick up electronics?
Not really, because some of them are tubes, things like that. Some of them, if I remember right, some of them may have mercury in the tubing and stuff. Chad can probably answer that better than I can. But,
Yeah, we contract with Computer Recycling Center in Springfield. To my knowledge, I don't know that they take residential drop-offs. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look into that. I've never used them before. But that's who we contract with. And depending on what it is, they charge us per trip. And then it depends on what the product is they're picking up. We get charged a nominal fee.
They're all CRT.
But it's our, responsibility as an organization to try to make sure that we're not, damaging the environment with the laptops, batteries, things like that.
I guess
So
my
that's who
question
we
goes
use.
back to if this seems to be a large issue.
it
Really
is.
does seem
It
to be a
is.
large issue.
I agree.
What are we going to do? Because they're not calling me about mattresses. They're saying, I've got
Yeah.
CRT screens and flat screens, and I don't know what to do with it.
With Best
Yeah.
Buy going, if that is true, then it's a challenge for our
You
community.
think Jamie down here would take these? Tanger will do that for us, won't they?
No.
Okay.
So I got to pay to have my mercury bulbs taken away, so. But yeah, there is a couple places in Springfield. I mean, that's where yeah, you got to haul it up there, and there is a charge, but just because of the environmental issues, that's where you got to take them to get rid of some of that stuff.
Mr. Skanes, I'll look into that and I'll let you know what I find out as well. Thank you. Sorry.
I looked into this a little. Who's running the recycle center for the county? Do you know a name?
Devin Huff is over it.
Devin? Okay.
Devin,
Because that's something we should be doing up there. The mercury batteries, they have to be isolated from other stuff. Then you get your CRTs and the other things. It's something we should be doing, or, as a county, I guess, should be doing. So I can get with Devin.
Okay.
And see what they
Yep.
feel about that.
We can do that, absolutely.
Just for the electronic stuff, though.
Yeah.
This is an item that I'd really like to get community input on. And this has not been a hot topic, but the few that have talked to me encouraged us to reinstitute the spring and fall cleanup. So I guess what we'll do tonight is we will maybe pass this on first reading and maybe get some input from the community before the next Alderman meeting.
Your Honor, we do not have this as an ordinance. It's just a discussion.
Right.
Oh. So then maybe the discussion is, I hate postponing
The
things.
community wants it, Mr. Mayor.
I do think the community wants it. So would we have a motion and approve anything, or just say that from the acknowledgement of the board, we'd like to continue with the spring and fall cleanup?
It's up to the board how formal you want to get, or you just want to give directions.
Head nods work.
You know what?
Mr. Keith's looking for the option, I think, what we're
That's
looking
it.
at. And, I mean, we know the budgetary stuff going on right now. This is a deal where the 2-day drop-off saves some dollars. So that's the way I would look at it.
So Keith, if we eliminated branches and kept it to a week in the spring, week in the fall, just not doing, trying to just do the trash appliances, the bulky stuff instead of the limbs. I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to get some input somewhere, so maybe think about a week, spring and fall, just 2 days instead of or weeks. Just do 1 week in the spring, 1 week in the fall, and just concentrate. You can't do the limbs and the other trash at the same time.
Usually
They have to be
no.
separate.
We divide and conquer, we'll do one ward with one crew and another ward with another crew, and they'll be picking up appliances, and as soon as we make the round with all the appliances, then we come back up for the brush and stuff.
I gotcha. And that's the only thing I think of is just put it down to 1 week instead of 2 weeks
And
each time.
pick up one or the other, then is what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And maybe cut this big number in half, or try to.
And like I said before, our guys are getting paid, whether they're doing that or whether they're working on the roads. It just takes away from our road crews and road maintenance and sidewalk maintenance right now. And which asphalt plants, that's the bad part. They're gonna shut down before too much longer, in probably mid-November. And we've got a lot of Kendall's water lines to repair to get those done. But a lot of asphalt work to be done. So, but like I said, whichever direction you all tell us to go is which way we'll go, and we'll get a news release out and let everyone know, so.
Well, I would entertain a motion then to revert back to the spring and fall cleanup, if an alderman would like to make that motion.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Could we clarify that, just let's slow down? I think Director Francis might want that more
Yeah.
detail as to, I've heard several options out here, so revert back to,
I move to revert back to our original.
For the brush and the appliances, junk,
Yes.
whatever you call it.
Yes.
Is there a second on the motion? Hearing none, the motion dies from lack of second. Is there an alderman who'd like to make an alternative motion?
Keith, real quick. You said your staff's, obviously they're working either way. In looking at the material you provided, and you may not have this number, because I'm on the finance committee, and I was at our meeting a few weeks ago, and 2022 budget is something we're working on and looking at, obviously, and have to get that balanced as best we can. And so of this number, this pickup for spring and fall 2019, the number is $39,871. You have any idea of what that looks like as far as payroll versus In other words,
Dump fees.
if 38,000, that's
Yeah.
payroll that we're spending anyways, then we're talking $1,800.
Yeah.
If only 10,000 was payroll, we're talking about a lot more money. So do we have any idea of what the breakdown
There's a
is?
small fraction of that is our dump fee. You know, the brush doesn't cost us anything other than gas for the dump trucks to haul it to Cooper Creek, and we pile it up, and then we burn it in a big brush pile.
So
It's basically the dump fees that have to go to the transfer
you're
station.
saying that's a pretty small portion of this 39,800?
Yes, sir.
In other words, we're going to spend this money either way, or close to it.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I guess I'd ask for Alderman Denham to maybe remake her motion, because I kind of misunderstood what we were looking at here.
I move to reinstate our original to the fall and spring trash pickup
For both appliances and
for
brush.
both appliances and brush, yes.
I will second that motion.
We've had a motion and a second. We need to vote from the board, please.
Got to be some discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, thought we've discussed.
Is there any credence in the discussion that Jeff lent into this about doing 1 week in spring and 1 week in the fall? Frees up your crews to do the water issues. Is that more palatable for staff? Can you think you can do it within that 1 week? I guess is what I'm saying.
Probably not pick up everything, you know, brush and appliances and junk. Basically, we couldn't do it all in 1 week. It just, it just varies every time we've done it before. Sometimes we'll get done in 3 days the next week, and sometimes we went over 2 weeks. It just depends on what people cut and pile out by the curb, how much brush and.
One of the issues that Cody addressed with you is the issue of time. So if we do have a blowout, they stop what they're doing.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
it's-
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, and we'll just push it down the road a week or so, or whatever we have to get through the emergency situation, right?
So under this, it would be a 2-week block
Usually,
as
yep,
opposed to
Yep.
1 week at a time.
correct.
And you're saying that 2 separate weeks would be easier for your department
Two separate.
to split it up?
It basically puts us back into taking care of the roads and the sidewalks, and we've got Christmas things coming up this time of year too, that we're getting ready to hit hot and heavy, beginning of next month. Because lights come on at November the 1st, I think.
Andy said. Any other discussion? Hearing none, are we now ready to vote?
Just one last question, Mr. Mayor. We leave that up to the discretion of Public Works to decide what 2 weeks in order to fill your needs. You don't feel that we're telling you to do it at a specific time frame, that you want to be able to choose the time to do that to maximize resources. And I can support that.
Yeah, and what we will do, if you all give us direction tonight which way to go with this, we'll put a news release out and give people a couple of weeks to get their limbs trimmed or whatever they want to do and their stuff out by the curb. And, some people have quite a bit of stuff, So that'll give them a couple of weeks to prepare for it and not just having to get it all done, because some people may need help to get it out to the curb, like you said before.
So,
Can I-
go ahead.
Can I get a clarification then I want to do it in a way that works for you. I don't want to force something on your department and you say, this isn't doable
Yeah.
for us. So
You tell us direction and go, we'll make it happen one way or the other.
I just don't know what our motion is.
So I have that motion. The motion is to reinstate back to the original spring and fall pickup that we have done in the past.
So that would be 2 separate weeks,
In,
2 weeks spring, 2 weeks fall.
so 4 weeks.
that's how it was
2 weeks
Based on
originally.
his
Yeah.
schedule.
2 weeks in spring, 2 weeks in fall is the way we used to do it. Correct. And, if we have to pull off, we've got a phone number for people to call into the Engineering and Public Works Department. that, we'll just tell the people that, we'll be around, because some of them do get impatient, and they want to know when you're coming by the house, and, we just politely tell them, we'll be there, just give us time, and we'll take their address down, just so we don't miss it, their name and address.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, you've heard the motion. Let's vote.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Keith.
Your Honor, the next item is a presentation of the city's regulations pertaining to land disturbance, municipal separate storm sewer systems, detention facilities, and utility extensions.
We'll begin with a staff report from Joel Hornicle, please.
Mayor, members of the board, this was a topic that you all asked us to present to you this evening back on the meeting in August the 10th. So we have several staff that will be giving little tidbits of information, mainly background, regulations, procedures that deal with some topics here. And we'll be more than happy to answer any questions once we're complete with our presentation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirby Dieterman to start us off.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I've been asked to kind of explain what the MS4 program is and its purpose. As the clerk stated, it means Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. This has been an evolution since 1888. They had the Rivers and Harbors Act that was passed after the Civil War because we were dumping stuff in the rivers. Then in the 40s, it got worse. Rivers caught fire. They passed the Water Pollution Control Act. That still didn't work enough, so in 72 they instated, the EPA did, which it was created then too, the Clean Water Act. And when the Clean Water Act was done, it was designed to clean up rivers, streams, lakes from wastewater. Well, we discovered that when we were cleaning up the wastewater, that wasn't the only pollutant. So they did the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which included non-point source discharges, which AKA stormwater, non-point source runoff. So from that, the MS4 program evolved. It's designed to go for cities over 10,000 people, up to 150,000. Phase 2 is what we are. Phase 1 is for that 150,000 plus. What the program is designed to do is to clean up the water and ensure that it stays clean. And we do that with 6 minimum control measures. First one is public outreach. That means we put stuff on the website and talk about it with people. Public participation, lake cleanups, river cleanups, stream teams. The third one is illicit discharge and elimination, and that is setting up ordinance and procedures when we have spills. We've been lucky on that one. The fourth one is construction site runoff. That's when we set up ordinance and procedures to ensure that the construction sites keep their dirt to themselves, for lack of a better term. The fifth one is post-construction stormwater management, and that is existing detention basins and the potential for new water quality features like bioswales, treatment basins, things of that sort. And the final one is us, general housekeeping. We have to set the example. We need to be beyond reproach and set the example for everybody to follow the rules. Under the permit, we are under a 5-year period. So every 5 years, we have to look at what we've done in the previous, improve upon it, and move forward. It's an evolutionary process. All permits are dynamic. They're not set in stone. You know, you get a permit, we review it, it's approved. Well, they'll go out and put what's in the ground. It doesn't work, well, we can change it. So it's not a written in stone. And the other big issue is we've got to watch jurisdictional issues. We're only allowed to do clean water within our proper city limits. And that's basically a sum up of the program right there.
Thank you, Kirby.
So just to provide a segue between Kirby and next to Keith Francis, who will be talking about detention, one of the requirements with MS4 is we implemented a land disturbance permit, and that has been in our community now and utilized for the last 2 to 3 years. We've utilized it to help with efforts for MS4, but largely it's the first step in a development process to make sure we're having that contact with the developer, they understand the rules and regulation, and eventually it feeds into our building permit process. Both the land disturbance and the building permit process are reviewed by staff under a plan review process to ensure that those plans incorporate all the rules and regulations of the city and that they understand that going into the project. Once we approve those plans, we issue the permit. However, that permit doesn't obligate the applicant or the property owner to do anything. It's up to them to decide when and if they ever pull the trigger on the project. We've had multiple projects over the years that have been issued building permits or land disturbance permits, and nothing ever happens on the property. Eventually, those get cycled out, they expire, they're closed, and if there's anything to happen on those properties in the future, they must come back through the process. The other point that I just want to touch on is part of our land disturbance permit, we ask the applicant to submit information that they've provided to other entities. For example, they provide a SWIP to the state. But that is just simply information that we ask to receive so we can ensure they followed through the steps with other agencies. By no means does that SWIP that they provide to the state pass that enforcement on to us. We are not the enforcement agency of that SWIP. It, again, is just a record that they've gone through that process so that we can continue on with our process. So just want to provide that information about the building permits and land disturbance permits. And part of the building permit and land disturbance permit is detention facilities, and that's what Keith Francis is going to come speak to next.
Mayor, members of the board, the way our detention basins usually work is when a project comes to light, developer wants to develop a piece of property, sometimes I'll get a call from either the developer or their engineering company to ask, do I need to provide detention for it? And if you recall back in the 90s when the boom was going on, I mean, several of you were around here then, I know Bill was, and a lot of the things didn't get built with detention basins, and the water, how it does off some of these parking lots and rooftops, and they're at 15% grades, and it gets to the bottom of the hill quick, and then it takes out stuff what's in its way, and does damage to properties and people's landscaping or whatever. So anyway, we're in the process of updating our detention basin requirements right now and have been for the last couple of years. Currently, they're only required to detain the 25-year storm event. In my engineering career, I've never designed or required anything less than the 100-year storm event, which we're getting ready to hopefully roll that out within the next 6 months at least, for the new requirements. And sometimes a water quality basin, when I say a water quality basin, it's what I've referred to it as, it's a sediment basin. It can be built in one and the same as a detention basin. And it can require, require a perforated plate over the outlet structure to meet your 2, 25, 50, and 100-year storm events. And your water quality is basically for the first flush off of a property. When I say the first flush, that's usually the 2 to 5 year storm event off of the property, and the way you would calculate that is the directly connected impervious area or over the entire site, in which you calculate a composite curve number or a composite runoff coefficient. Usually properties that are less than 100 acres, you could use the rational method, it's called. When they get over that, you get a better scenario and runoff calculation using the SCS method, which utilizes the curve number method, which is based also on soil types. And we use the USDA soil maps to get these numbers off of, which type of soil type it is, A, B, C, or D. D-type soils are less permeable, A-type soils are sandy, silty, loamy soils that'll really soak up the water. The D-type soils are the clay-type soils, which, and rocks, solid rock, which have runoff. They don't absorb much water in, more of it runs off. So you have to look at each case-by-case basis, because as you well know, like on Highway 76, a lot of these properties where the old hotel was, those are all fill material. So the curve number method, SCS method's not very good there, because you're not looking at virgin-type soils. You're looking at disturbed soils that's been hauled in with rock and concrete and asphalt and whatever else is in the soil mix, So that's when you'd revert back to the rational method. So usually, and when these projects do come up, we do require the detention basin. And for example, there was one just up north of the hospital here, a little coffee shop that went in, is a gravel parking lot. He's changing the gravel to a concrete parking lot. Well, the people down on Iserman have drainage problems right now. That's one of our drainage projects that was outlined. So they couldn't put detention in because it's on the side of a cliff back there, basically. And so we had them to collect all the water in an inlet, pipe it back out to the street, and dump it in the curb inlet to help the people down below there so it doesn't continue flooding them. They said, well, it's been like that for 30 years. Well, too bad. We're changing that. You can't just keep dumping people, water on people. So two wrongs don't make a right. So when things come to redevelop like that, that's when we, do our best to get the detention basin requirement in there. And a lot of the developers and the engineers are more than happy, because their engineering seals going on there, and, that's their livelihood, just like mine is, and I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize it. So anyway, I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have, or sit down.
I have a question, Keith.
Yep.
Currently, the requirements are, if you start construction on a site, you have to not allow any more rainfall or water flow off your property up to a 25-year rain event.
Correct. For pre-developed conditions.
Boy, that's not very much.
No. And everything else goes over a big overflow weir, and it doesn't get detained much. So that's why, like I said, in my 30-some years, I've never had anything or designed anything less than a 100-year storm event. When I was at Springfield, we had some pretty strict requirements, and some of our updates to our criteria is going to be just right out of Springfield's criteria,
Yep, so what you're working towards is it'll be for a minimum of a 100-year
Yes, sir,
flood
that's
event.
correct.
And you think that'll be done
I hope
within
within the next
6 months?
6 months to roll it out.
Okay.
To get that portion of it rolled out. Now, there's other criteria. We're going to continue to work on our other public improvement standards, and Kendall's revising his also for the water and the sewer, and we're doing some revisions to our details that are unclear, for our road sections and things like that. So it's a good thing we're doing, and, it's going to be a good product when we get it finished.
Thank you, Keith, appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions?
No, just a statement. You guys required that for us when we made the addition of the back of the Engler block and added that parking deck. Those were like 6 10-inch lines that went down into another whistle that was huge and dropped that off the edge into another basin, so we didn't run any off. So we already have something like that, Mayor. We've been doing it. At least we had to do it. And that was 93, 94, 95.
Yeah,
But it would have been based on the maximum rainfall of a 20-year
the 25-year
25-year
storm, right.
storm versus a 100-year
And
storm.
like I said, some engineers and some developers will go the extra mile and put in the 100-year without even saying a word, and I greatly appreciate that right now. So, but it will be in one of our design standards, though, for the 100-year as a minimum.
Thank you, Keith.
Next up, we have Kendall Powell. He's going to be talking about utility extensions involved with development projects.
Good evening. I just simply want to provide you an update of the sanitary sewer main extension project for the Country Bluff Estates. The sewer main extension plans are being finalized, or real close to being finished. Through that design process and survey work, it was found that the existing sewer main, it's a 6-inch main that's located on Country Bluff, in the Country Bluff subdivision, did not meet the minimum slope requirements when originally installed. This sewer main extension will correct this issue. Also, during the design process, the sewer main, it was found that the sewer main was not centered within the recorded easement. It's actually tucked to one side of the easement, which will make it very difficult for us to replace with an upsized line without obtaining a temporary easement. So we will have to go before the neighboring property owners and request a temporary construction easement. As part of that, that will require us to replace a driveway. It'll be a significant portion, or a significant amount of work there. We'll actually have to replace the whole driveway in order to put the sewer main in. So the next step would be to pursue with trying to obtain those temporary easements at this point. So be happy to answer any questions.
What length of that 6-inch line do we need to replace?
That length is approximately 125 feet.
What's the size of replacement, one more time?
Be an 8-inch.
Is 8-inch going to handle it, buddy?
Yes.
And this is the 8-inch line that connects to the pipe that we had the funding from Taney County
Yes, sir.
sewer.
Yes.
And that's 8-inch also.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And then finally, we have the city's attorney, Chris Liebeck, to kind of summarize what you've heard and offer some final thoughts.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. If you recall, a couple meetings ago, the mayor asked me a very pointed question from the dais, and he asked, are there any, basically explain any and all possible recourses that the city of Branson can take against the developers, the properties at the fountains of Fall Creek. What can we do as a city to prevent this property from getting flooded? That was kind of a summary of the question that was posed to me a couple meetings ago. In summary, and I'll start with the short answer and then give you the long answer, until something happens at that property, as was alluded to by Joel, Kirby, and Keith, i.e. a building permit, the land gets disturbed, it's graded, something is constructed, that causes a violation that can be enforced. Surface water issues between those adjacent properties is a private property matter. It's between those two properties. Okay, and I'm basing that on three assumptions. Number one, as Kirby said, there's no dirty water, no siltation in the water. Second assumption is there's no pollution. So again, because there's no siltation, no pollution, we're not triggering any Clean Water Act violations, things that the city or the state could intervene in. And then the third assumption that I'm making here when I provide you this answer is that the surface water runoff is being discharged into a natural waterway. You notice there's a map up here behind me showing the blue line. In my layman's terms, the blue line is basically a creek bed. That's where the water flows to when there's heavy rains. Okay? So here in Missouri, runoff, as what we have going on here, would be considered surface water, and that is water running across land that emanates from natural sources such as rain or melting snow. And then since the late 1800s, surface water has been considered a common enemy to all landowners, and they could guard against it in their own way. Okay? As such, when a landowner improved his or her property, he was not responsible for the damages to the neighbor's land by reason of the fact that surface water might thereby have been turned upon his or her neighbor, so long as the improvements were done in a proper manner. This was called the common enemy doctrine. Okay, surface water is a common enemy to all. In '93, our Supreme Court here in Missouri kind of changed the rule. Okay, they moved the state of Missouri away from the common enemy doctrine and they established what's called the rule of reasonable use involving surface water runoff cases, okay? In this case, it's Heinz Implement Company versus the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission. They said that under the rule of reasonable use, each possessor is legally privileged to make a reasonable use of his land, even though the flow of surface waters is altered thereby and causes some harm to others, but incurs liability when his harmful interference with the flow of surface waters is unreasonable. So we moved from this common enemy to all to is the use of the land unreasonable to the neighbors, okay? What I've provided you, and in context with that real quick, so when does the defendant's conduct in that situation incur liability? Under two things. It's either intentional or unreasonable, or negligent or reckless, or causing an abnormally dangerous activity, okay? So I provided you all with the Hansen case. I thought this was a really interesting case from 1990 because it's very similar, okay? It talks about the potential actions these private parties could have against their neighbor, and there's two general ones, trespass and nuisance. The other kind of key point to look at in the procedural history of this case I provided the board is that there's no political subdivision named, there's no county named. Again, this goes back to my original point that this is an action between private parties potentially. I can't give legal advice, I represent the city of Branson, but again, this is where they would seek counsel, okay? And what that case kind of stands for is that both the nuisance and trespass action depend on a finding that the defendant discharges water outside of the natural drainway on the property. Okay, that's the blue line you see on the map behind me. And there was one really interesting quote that I want to read to the board from that case. It says, a developer may collect surface water on its property in artificial drains and precipitate it into a natural drainway channel thereon, even though in doing so they might increase and accelerate the flow of the surface water in its natural channel onto the lands of the plaintiffs being the people that sued in this case. So, in summary, again, under those three assumptions we've made today, there's nothing to suggest that the city of Branson would be involved in any surface water matter here unless we can demonstrate pollution, contaminants or dirty water, or some sort of a violation upon a building permit or a land disturbance permit issued by the city. So, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir. Cody, I think you were going first. I saw you reach for your mic.
I just wanted, that is on. I just wanted clarification that on this particular issue, Fountains on Fall Creek, up to this point, no, and maybe this is directed to Joel, I don't know, but no land disturbance permit or building permit has been applied for.
So for the Fountains of Fall Creek project, they did apply for both a land disturbance permit and several building permits. The building permits never made it out of plan review. They were closed by the applicant and they relocated the project to a different property within the city. So we have never issued a building permit for the property. As far as the land disturbance permit goes, again, I was referencing the documentation they provided to us, that they provided to the state level, and that request was only for the portion that was to involve the Fountains of Fall Creek property. It wasn't for the entire property. It was only intended for a small portion of the property that they never have done any work since time that that permit's been issued in that area. So therefore, there's nothing for the city to inspect against or apply the regulations against.
And thank you. I think that's maybe, my question was, or should have been, there's been no permit issue that's been acted upon.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So there has been a land disturbance permit issued, but no action's been taken with respect to that.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Oh,
Do it now. I just wanted to make a comment, Your Honor. I would first like to thank Kirby, Kendall, and Keith for all the hard work that you're putting in to help protect the properties here and our citizens. I don't believe that the permitting process is the problem. I'll go back to say it's the annexation process, which is the problem, because it provides a loophole, a continual loophole that allows the system to be worked, and I believe that's where our focus needs to be, is on the annexation process. Again, thank you very much to our staff.
I just wanted to ask him one more time, Chris, make sure I got you right 100%. The trigger in all of this is putting a shovel in the ground, a backhoe in through there, disturbing the ground and getting the permit. That's be the trigger for Branson to act as it's currently set.
Correct.
Good evening. My name is Cherry Webster. I live at 118 Country Bluff Drive in Country Bluff Estates, which is the subdivision that abuts this property. Well, I have about 6 comments based on what was presented. Let's start with the permit that Joel just mentioned. When I did a records request for the permit, it shows that in the description box, it says it's for construction or development of 52-acre parcel. And then when you look at the SWIP that is attached to that document that you're required to submit with the permit, it's for the 52 acres. And in fact, that SWIP is what shows the 40,000 square foot filter basin for the parcel. And while the contractor was knocking the trees down back in February of 2020, he told the neighbors that there'd be a lake behind the houses and behind the property. And that lake was going to be the detention pond, the filter basin. Well, it's not there. But I really dispute the fact that it's 10 acres. I mean, when the description, Joel told us on August 27th when we met with him that whatever's in the description box, it doesn't matter, doesn't make any difference. And then you've got the SWIP that shows the basin for the full 52 acres. So which is it? Is it for 10 acres or is it for 52 acres? And I would suggest that it's actually for the 52 acres. To date, there are no inspections that have been done on the property other than MS4. And Kirby did that even while the property was still in the county because mud was pouring off of the parcel because there were no erosion control measures in place. But there were no compliance review inspections to see if the property complied with the Public Works Department's design criteria standards, particularly the ones in Section 7 for the storm drainage facility design criteria. And the reason for that is what Alderman Denon just said. It wasn't in the city limits yet. The problems that Country Bluff has had all revolve around the annexation. And when we met with Joel on August 27th, his response was, there's no need to change the city code. You shouldn't be annexing that kind of property in again. He said that property should never have been annexed. It was out of compliance. Out of compliance with what? Well, it was out of compliance with the DNR SWIP. Yes, he had met the sediment filled threshold level, but it didn't meet the sediment-free stormwater threshold level. There was no full vegetation on the property at the time that it was annexed. And so to resolve this problem from happening again, there needs to be changes to the annexation section of the city code. And this is a perfect example of why you need to change the code, because the developer was able to game the system between the first reading of the annexation and the second reading of the annexation. He did all of the land destruction process during that 3-month process, And so that when he came into the city, all the trees were down. Now, Mr. Francis mentioned the cover coefficient. When you have as to how much water is going to be running off of the developer's property onto the downstream properties. Well, in February 2020, at the first annexation reading, the cover coefficient was 0.3 according to your document. That's a treed lot. It was a forest. It was a mature forest with, 70-foot tall trees. And if you look at this diagram, the far left rectangular property where the blue line starts is the 25-acre Nevins parcel. Then the next kind of grayish, lighter colored rectangular property is the Ruta property. And I've walked up that creek bed in the wintertime because I wanted to know where all the water was coming from down in our creek. It ran through the creek, but it only ran during the rain, and it did not overflow the creek bed in the first 11 years we were here, except maybe 3-4 times. But since Ruta has taken all the trees down, it flows the creek boundaries all the time. But I was able to walk that creek bed all the way up to the Nevins parcel. And then I couldn't walk any further. I couldn't even see into the woods. It was such a dense forest. But the blue line that crosses from west to east on Ruta's property is gone. The backhoe and the bulldozer has destroyed the creek bed. There is no creek bed there. It has just become a big swale. So you have up here by the lake, the bluff, you've got an 870-foot elevation that drops down to where it runs into Country Bluff. That would be the 815-foot elevation. That's a 55-foot drop over the course of about 4 houses, about 400 to 500 feet. And if you come off from this Fall Creek Road, the drop is it's an 890-foot elevation that drops 80 feet over the course of about 1,000 feet. And the water pours from both directions down into Lot 34 and Lot 35 like a funnel. And that's where the SWIP designed the 40,000 square foot detention pond.
Excuse me, but there's a pointer if you would like to use a pointer
Oh,
on the map, if you want to.
I can figure out how to use it. Do I don't know. Oh, I have to hold the button. Can you see that? I can see it, but you can't see it. Oh, I have to point up there. Oh, okay. All right. So this whole length right here, that creek bed has been destroyed. It's not there anymore. So the only remaining part of this blue line water creek bed is right here on Lot 35 and partly on Lot 34.
Sherry, is that county? I don't know. This stuff on the west side, is that county?
This used to be the county. Nevins property is still in the county.
Okay, thank you.
And Lot 35 was in the county until May of this year. So Joel made the comment at the August 27th meeting that we had with him that Lot 35 probably wouldn't be a buildable lot right now because you need I believe it was a 50-foot distance from a blue line waterway. Well, the question then becomes is Ruta going to be able to build on 50 feet of either side of that blue line waterway that's creek bed's gone? I don't know. That's one issue that has come up just recently. But in terms of the annexation, had there been a filter basin there, it would still be functioning as a stormwater detention pond. But the morning after this first reading of the annexation, Ruta started using Lot 35 as his detention pond. That's a 13,000 square foot lot versus the 40,000 square foot basin that the engineer designed. And you can't use Lot 35 without using Lot 34 beside it. And so to say that it's okay for him to just dump water in the downstream properties, it doesn't sound logical. And I don't think it would have happened if this property had already been in the city limits when he did his land disturbance. And so, again, I go back to there has to be a change to the annexation process. Otherwise, you're going to have a fiasco like this again. This is not a unique situation. And it's now we've got 4 lots in Country Bluff that are located in the Dan Ruta floodplain. And he didn't want to put the basin in because he didn't want to pay the price for it. In fact, in July this year, he asked us. He told our POA president, each 100 house should contribute $750 or $75,000 to build the detention pond. Really? His engineer designed the filter basin for him to build. Why should we be building it? I said, this alderman board facilitated the land destruction process last year by extending and postponing the second reading for 3 months. 3 months he was able to do this. Something has to be done with the annexation process. Additionally, Mr. Francis mentioned the cover coefficients. Let's go back to that. Another reason to change the annexation criteria. On February, at the first reading, the cover coefficient for the forest was 0.3. On May the 11th, the day before the second reading, the actual annexation of May 11th, 2020, the cover coefficient was 0.65. That requires detention according to your Public Works Design Criteria Manual. Well, on May the 12th, it was annexed into the city. Well, what happened this past May when he went to get, you were about to approve the $85,000 for the sewer extension. Mr. Ruta presented a letter from his engineer that said, okay, that he didn't use the term 52-acre wheat farm, that is what's there right now, because there was no grass. He didn't follow that part of the SWIP either. It's covered, it's got vegetation on it, and so he considers that now 0.3 vegetation at 0.3 cover coefficient, and it would only be 0.65 for medium density residential whenever that happens to be built. So what happened on May the 12th, 2020? Abracadabra, the cover coefficient reverted back from 0.6 to 0.3. Yet another reason to change the annexation criteria. There has to be an inspection for compliance with the stormwater drainage design criteria. Throughout the land disturbance, or throughout the city code, and most definitely in the land disturbance process, it talks about applicants can ask for a review or a pre-permit meeting. Well, for an annexation, you need to require one. You need to require one, and you need to lay out the rules for what the developer is going to have to encounter. And if the developer is going to do all of his land disturbance while he's still in the county, then you ought to be able to establish code that allows the city to go back and use either the aerial photographs that would show the density of the forest, and you have those from 2019, you have updated aerial photographs. You can go back there and figure out what the cover coefficient was, but anybody with half a brain can see that a 40-acre forest versus a 52-acre wheat farm is going to have a whole different level of water saturation. When it rains, Mr. Francis also mentioned the 25-year flood. I don't know, but have we had a 25-year flood in the last 12 years? In the last 1 year? Well, I can tell you that in the first 11 years that we were here, before Ruta tore down tree number 1, that culvert in the road at Lot 35 overflowed 3, maybe 4 times. And even then, it barely overflowed the creek boundaries. The way Lot 35 is situated right there is up by the culvert. It's like the bottom of a bowl. It's shaped like a bowl, and it catches the rainwater. The water wasn't pouring all over, overflowing the creek boundaries, except during those 3 or 4 times. But since Ruta has knocked down the trees, it's every time it rains. I presented to this board, and I've sent pictures on May 20th, not two weeks after the property was annexed. The entire street, the driveway that Kendall mentioned is going to have to be replaced, that entire driveway was submerged. The water was across the street and across the creek at the Gears house, all the way up to the siding on their house. Their backyard was completely inundated. Lot 35 was inundated. Lot 34, it was going up the slopes on Lot 34. The entire 13,000 square feet of Lot 35 was, at the culvert, the water came up to here on me. 2 days later, when water drained out, this is how tall it was at the culvert. So to say that it's okay to dump water down on downstream properties, I don't think that's correct. And if you look at the Public Works document, it says that you have to treat the downstream properties as if they're already developed. And at least Lot 34 should have a single-family detached home on it. And when Joel mentioned that Lot 35 probably isn't buildable because it's within 50 feet of the Blue Line waterway, that goes back to the question here: is Ruta going to be able to build on 50 feet of that area that he's already destroyed? Additionally, Chairman Davis last week at the Planning and Zoning Commission mentioned that detention would be addressed during the major subdivision process when they go for a building permit. But from what Joel just said tonight, I got the impression that, or it was maybe Attorney LeBecq, that there's only going to be detention required if there's a violation. But to have to wait until a pipe is laid for sewer or water, or a foundation has to be laid for a building, that's unreasonable. That filter basin should have been installed. It should be functioning as a stormwater detention pond right now, and it's all because the developer didn't want to do what his engineer designed. And we know that because of the cover letter that the engineer submitted to the DNR on March 15th, 2020, where that cover letter was to the response to a warning letter that the DNR issued to the developer from an unannounced inspection on February 24th, 2020, which was day 13 of his tree removal process. But it took him another week or two it took him 11 days after a phone call to come out and do the inspection. It took him another 5 or 6 days to send the warning letter. And then by the middle of March, that's when the response kicked in. And that revised SWIP required the detention pond. But we know what Mr. Ruta's modus operandi is. In that cover letter, the engineer stated that the original plan was to clear the land in phases, but due to a pending annexation into the city of Branson, the landowner instructed the contractor to clear the majority of the property without notifying the engineer in order to revise the land disturbance process. You have a developer here who gamed the system by refusing to do what his engineer designed for him. He hid what he was doing from the engineer. And of course, he hid it from the DNR and the county as well, because he had land disturbance permits with both of them. And then he circumvented the rules by, instead of putting in a 200 by 200 foot filter basin, he put in a 105-foot row of riprap. No hole behind it. And on top of that, if you look up here at the road, right about here, there's been a wet pond up there for at least the 12 years we've lived here, and it was catching rainwater. But Mr. Ruda's contractor slotted the pond. It hasn't held water since over a year and a half. Not only that, but if you look at the 10 acres where Ruda was originally supposed to clear way up here, if you look at the civil plans that he submitted with his building permit application, it wasn't approved, but he submitted the plans, and the civil set shows a two-plus acre, I believe it's 2+ acre sediment or detention pond on the downhill side of that parcel. Well, before Mr. Ruda moved the backhoe off of that big parcel, he could have dug a hole there. He could have dug a hole there to catch some water. He could have left the wet pond that was there to catch water. He could have dug a hole behind the 105-foot riprap. This is a developer. This is a developer that insists upon doing everything his way. He hides what he's doing. He circumvents the rules. He games the system. And this board needs to seriously look at protecting the residents better. This 25-year-old neighborhood was not protected, and it was because of the annexation.
Sherry?
I think I'm done. Those are my questions. I addressed all the issues.
A couple things. One is, I think we're all clear that we have codes that need to be updated and changed. And I believe we're working on that now. When we were in the planning and zoning meeting, the last meeting, what I'm trying to do is find a solution. And I'm glad you have this map up here, and I'm also glad I got my handy dandy pointer. So, see, comes in use. Works. So this approximately is the Ruda track.
Yes, sir, all of that.
So there's I'm assuming in here somewhere is going to be the stormwater detention area for the Ruda track.
Yes.
And from what I understand, for the long term, that really should be enlarged to include this water that's coming through, because that is not on the Ruda track, but it's traveling through the Ruda track and then through Country Bluff.
Yes, and Mr. Ruda stated last year that when he would put that detention pond up there at the low-income housing section, that he intended it to also capture additional water coming from above his property, and that would benefit Country Bluff. So it hasn't been done yet. Had the rules been followed, I think we wouldn't be here tonight.
I couldn't disagree with you. But the question tonight is, if we can accomplish getting that stormwater detention basin in, then we can't go back and change the past. We can help make corrections going forward. But right now, the driving force is getting that stormwater detention in. Is that correct?
Yes, and if we haven't had a 25-year flood in the last 12 years, God help us when we do. It will be a mess over there.
I'm fairly certain we have.
You think
I
we
have a
have?
property on Taney.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, that detention pond will heal your ails.
That and the buffer, that's yet another rule that the developer decided to circumvent. The property was originally zoned in 2006 under the condition that there would be a 50-foot undisturbed vegetative buffer. And then when he came in and did the annexation last summer, he liked the zoning that he had in the county, and he wanted to keep it. And so his attorneys decided to to try and go the loophole route of the annexation plan of intent, and they brought in the zoning from the county, but they didn't bring in the condition of the zoning of the county. And none of us knew back in February 2020 that it was a 50-foot buffer. We were just told by Ruta's contractor that it was 30 feet. Actually, the contractor came down and did 50 feet to start. And he said to us, I'm going to go back to Dan Ruta and ask him, maybe just use an extra 20 feet, full 50 feet as a trail for both properties to use. And he came back the next day and he said, no, I'm told 30 feet. So my neighbor and I held the end of the tape measure on the survey, survey tape at the pin. And while he spray painted the 30 feet away to make sure that it didn't come any closer than 30 feet. So he's already destroyed 20 feet of the 50-foot buffer. We think he ought to be made to make up for that. Ideally, a berm from pavement to bluff, 5 to 10-foot berm, grassy slopes, leveled on the top with tall evergreens every 20 to 30 feet. We'd be real happy with that. We have never asked for the development not to go through. We've had suggestions. In 2019, we asked for senior housing, condos, because then you don't have the year-round residents. And that fell on deaf ears. But what we have been asking is give us what we were supposed to be given, the 50-foot buffer and the detention pond. We're not trying to bash the city, bash the county and the developer, but we are documenting procedures, processes, and behavior, albeit bad behavior.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Yes, bottom line, that's what we want.
So I'm going to, I'm going to suggest that I'm going to work with our board and see if we can come up with a solution.
We appreciate that.
And I appreciate you caring and representing your neighborhood.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, are we on number 7 already?
We are. Your Honor, the next item is a resolution of support for affordable housing by Branson Affordable Housing Developers, LLC, located at Rosalie Street, Branson, Missouri. The floor is open for a motion adopting this resolution. We have a motion by Alderman Skanes and a second by Alderman Fenton.
We'll now have a staff report from Mr. Joel Hornickel.
Mayor, members of the board, good evening again. Simply here to introduce Mr. Mark Ruta. He is part of the team that is making this request to you all for support of affordable housing.
My name is Mark Ruta. I'm here asking for a resolution of support for Branson Affordable Housing to build up to 50 MHDC low-income housing units. The site we have selected is off of Rosalie Street, not very far from another project that we built, Branson Gardens. Selected this site because we don't have a piece of property here that we feel like is suited for this. This was master planned several years ago to include some apartments. Obviously, the design at this point would be a little bit different. This would be turning in an application to MHDC for affordable housing, again, up to approximately 50 units. Rents, conceptual rents would be in the $450 to $600 range. Would serve individuals 60% or lower. Area median income, and I'd answer any questions that you have.
Any members in the audience wishing to address this? Sherry, each member of the community is allowed 20 minutes to speak per 2 weeks, and your 20 minutes has been expired.
Yes, I think I heard that ding. Lisa, I have. Actually, my comments just a few minutes ago are probably half of what my presentation is on this topic. The wording in this proposed ordinance is merely boilerplate. Any developer's name, project address, and number of housing units can be slotted in this template. There's no consideration for the developer's past performance in this resolution, and there most definitely should be. Branson Affordable Housing Developers is Dan Ruta's front organization and development partner. It does not need the city's resolution of support in order to rezone and build this project. It doesn't need the resolution to apply for funding to the Missouri Housing and Development Commission. It may add some scoring points to their application, but they can most certainly apply for funding without the resolution. This is a rerun. We have seen this movie before. Same team, same players, just a different site. Deborah Hart, Tammy Creason, Riley Shantz, and the landowner Dan Ruta. Is this a Deborah Hart project? No. A Tammy Creason project? No. These team players know the process and the procedures for applying low-income housing funding through the MHDC, but rest assured this is another Dan Ruta project. Where have we seen this team before? Fountains on Fall Creek, which abuts Country Bluff Estates. In 2019, this entity was given a resolution of support that resulted in a $5 million Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds from HUD, administered by MHDC. And in last October 27th, at this Alderman hearing, there was a second resolution support granted, but resulted in MHDC denying funding. Why did they even need a second resolution of support for the same parcel? Because the landowner tried to game the system. We just went through all of that. When he tore those trees down, it was before the environmental assessment was done. And so HUD deemed the property tainted, graciously allowed them to keep the funding as long as he moved the project to another site, which he did off of Gulfview Drive. So how do we know that he tried to game the system in the past? Well, we just went through that with the SWIP and the engineer's revelation of the developer's modus operandi, which is hide what you're doing, circumvent the rules, game the system. That's his MO from day one. People are creatures of habit. This MO will continue to play out again and again, just like the rezoning of Fountains on Fall Creek 2 months after the initial annexation, where Ruta's attorney and the city attorney circumvented the P&Z public hearing zoning process using an annexation plan of intent. Just like the relocated projects off Gulfview Drive, where Ruta renegotiated the number of units downward from 40 units to 30 units for the same $5 million in HUD funds. This Rosalie Street project won't be any different when it comes to circumventing the rule and gaming the system. So what have we seen from this developer at Fountains on Fall Creek? Well, we just went through that. After 18 months, no basin. He's using a 13,000 square foot lot for a 40,000 square foot basin. Last spring, he was supposed to hydroseed the 52 acres or seed and straw it. He did neither. Instead, he had people out there with a handheld, hand-cranked broadcast spreader spreading seed. And what happened after the first rain? All the seed ran down to the bottom of the slope. What happened in June? All of the grass burned up because the temperature turned to 95 all summer long. 6 months after the property was supposed to be seeded, the DNR inspected the property again, told them to seed and straw the slopes. He did that. He did put straw down that time, but then it didn't rain. And so all fall and winter, There was no rain come this past March. The slopes were yellow, no grass. So the DNR asked Ruta again to hydroseed the bare spots. He finally did that 12 months after he was originally supposed to do that. And so on April 30th, he hydroseeded just the bare spots. So what do we have? The 52-acre weed farm. Ruta refuses to mow it. On the other side of our entrance is a cow pasture. College of the Ozarks has no problem mowing their pasture. They've already done that this year. And then in July, I mentioned that Ruta had asked us to pay for the detention pond ourselves. I speak for many of the residents in Country Bluff. We watched this board facilitate Dan Ruta's gaming of the system last year, and it allowed Ruta to circumvent the city's design criteria for storm drainage facilities. I think it's unfortunate that the Hart Crescent entity chose to partner with the landowner with so much baggage, but knowing the past actions of this development team, we would recommend that this board vote not at this time on this unnecessary resolution of support for the low-income housing on Rosalie Street until this same team, most notably the same landowner, corrects the damage he has created at the Fountains on Fall Creek project with, 1, his refusal to follow his engineer's design and construct a filter basin detention pond, and with 2, his destruction of 20 feet of the 50-foot buffer, which was a condition of the parcel's original zoning. Is this board ready to set a standard for the development in the city? Is this board ready to declare enough of hiding what you're doing, circumventing the rules, and gaming the system? This is an opportunity to set a standard. What could happen in the next 5 weeks? The city planning director could approve a land disturbance permit to construct a detention pond. The baggage-laden landowner could construct, not commit to construct, but actually construct a 40,000 square foot detention pond that would eliminate a lot of baggage. The Board of Aldermen could approve a resolution of support next month at the October 25th hearing, and the developer's front partner could attach that resolution to their funding application by the MHDC's October 31st deadline. A lot can happen in 5 weeks. It starts now with the vote on this agenda. I can answer your questions if you have any.
No, my question would go back to Mark. She threw a lot of stuff out, and it's only right for you to be able to respond to it. We just don't hear one. We should be hearing both. I'm sorry. I should be pulling this down.
And toward you.
About that. Do you want to respond to any of it? I mean, I honestly think you can't hold one piece of property responsible to the other one. I just can't. I don't see that.
I wasn't prepared for this tonight, so I would like to have a little time to prepare if I'm going to respond to those comments.
Fair enough.
And are any other members in the audience? Nope. Members of the board?
What I'm hearing us being asked to do is something I don't think we have the authority to do. I understand the frustration. I don't know how that relates to this property. But back to this Fountains on Fall Creek issue, we've heard from staff, we've heard from Keith and Joel and Chris and everybody. You know, I heard the term loophole, gaming the system, 50-foot buffers from the county. Those are all things that we simply, you know, we can't, whether the county had a buffer requirement or not, that has no bearing on us, is my understanding. Loopholes in gaming the system, you know, I see this as kind of two separate issues. We've got, you know, the property was annexed under the rules as they exist today. Are they right? Are they wrong? Not weighing in on that. I'm just telling you, based on the opinions and advice and information we've received, the property was annexed under the rules we have today. Does that mean they need to be changed? Maybe, but again, that's why I see it as a separate issue. I wasn't on this board Alderman Denham wasn't on this board, Alderman Cooper wasn't on this board. We weren't on the board last year when this property was annexed. It was annexed. Does that mean we need to look at the annexation process? Perhaps, and in that process, that's what we're doing. That's what we're going through. I know Joel and his team are working on that. So a private cause of action is just simply not the city's problem. It's not our undertaking. It's not our job to spend money litigating a private cause of action as I see it. So I don't think that in any way relates to item number 7 here. So I will be voting yes in support of this.
Any other members of the board?
Mark,
Jeff?
can we get some bearing here? Is this cabins at Grand Mountain? Right here?
So the existing cabins at Grand Mountain is down this way. This PD, this property is, the property line is approximately here when the original Gretna Road PD. So this would be a potential future phase of cabins that has not been built to this.
Mark, where's Gretna on that?
Gretna's
Yeah,
right here.
Okay, thanks, man.
So same with this right here?
Correct.
6,
So-
7, 8, 9?
Correct. So 6 is Lock Supply. Stone Ridge Carpet is
Okay.
here. So these buildings exist right now, but the development here and behind here does not exist at this time.
And then the aquarium building is right here somewhere,
Is right on number 1.
Yeah. So this is one way in, one way out.
Well,
here.
there actually is an entrance road here that loops around right there, so you can theoretically come in
Gotcha. So
this
that's
way.
an alleyway right now behind these buildings.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question to Mr. Ruda. When was the Gretna Road PD,
Alderman Denham,
Adopted.
would you speak in your mic, please?
when was the Gretna Road PD approved? Do you remember?
I
been a
would
long
tell
time?
you, it was a long time ago. I don't know, maybe 2005, or I'm guessing.
Okay.
But it's been quite some time ago.
Okay, and so for the section, for the subject property area, what's currently on the property?
Currently, it's undeveloped property.
And has it been cleared?
Yes,
Yeah.
it has been cleared.
Okay, and then what is the density in the PD for this portion?
I don't know. The master plan, I think that the way that it was drawn there was 48 units is what was master planned at.
Okay, thanks.
But I'd have to go back and look at the PD to find out exactly how that reads.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none. Ready to vote?
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before the next item, I'm going to call for a 10-minute recess.
So it's you tonight instead of.
Yes, sir.
No, I've not jumped up yet. Yeah, must need it.
Let's call this meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, we're on number 8.
Your Honor, the next item is a resolution for the appointment of a representative and an alternate to the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission. The floor is open for a motion adopting this resolution.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Kendall Powell.
Good evening. I had previously brought to the board about a month ago an appointment of another staff member as primary representative for this commission. The staff member has been reassigned to another position and will no longer be able to represent us in this commission. So this resolution is to recommend myself, Kendall Powell, as the primary representative and continue with John Manning as our alternative. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone in the audience wishing to address this? Any members of the board? And it's time to vote.
The motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is a resolution certifying the 2021 Missouri Local Government Employees Retirement System loggers delegates. The floor is open for a motion adopting the resolution.
We have a motion and a second, and a staff report from Taney Fisher.
Mayor, members of the board, every year I bring to you a resolution to select an employer delegate and a member delegate for the loggers annual meeting. This year, those persons that we've asked for you to consider certifying, there's going to be Ted Martin as a member delegate and Marcia Chapman as the employer delegate. I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the members of the audience? Any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading bill number 6047, an ordinance approving the employee wellness plan for the City of Branson employees to complete in 2022 for tier determination for discounted medical insurance in 2023. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6047.
Motion and a second, and staff report from Jan.
Mayor, members of the board, this is an update to the wellness plan that we have for every year for employees to complete so that they can establish the tier level that they are for discounted medical insurance for the employee-only portion of medical insurance. We took input from the Employee Human Resources Committee. They go out and get information from all of their constituents, if you will, and they bring it back to the committee, and we assembled this wellness plan based on that employee input. Then we took this plan to the Human Resources Committee, and they approved it as well. Simply stated, we're going to simplify the plan. We're going to reduce the number of elements to the plan with respect to being tobacco or nicotine-free or completing the cessation program and completing a health risk assessment through your primary care physician. In the past, we had always had a health risk assessment held out like at the Recplex or up in HR or somewhere that cost the city somewhere around $10,000 to $11,000. We're going to eliminate that additional cost and just have the employee's primary care physician do it, where it's no additional cost to the employee or the employer at that point. And essentially, we're going to have we've got the criteria set forth in this ordinance, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jan. Any questions from members of the audience? Questions or comments from the board?
Just one as an observation. Thank you for saving the citizens of Branson $10,000 in costs by just using their primary care physician. Seems to be quite smart.
Any other comments? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Jan.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6048, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Sloan's Land and Landscaping for tree and plant removal services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6048.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Cindy Show.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, bids were received on August 5th, 2021 for tree and plant removal. The city of Branson has soliciting bids for tree and plant removal services to mitigate invasive species in trees and plants in 6 different parks. The parks are North Beach Park, which is the majority of it, Lakeside RV Park, Alexander, Iserman, Recplex, and Stockstill. The project is being funded through the use of the Tree Resource Improvement and Maintenance, which is our TRIM grant, awarded through the Missouri of Conservation Department. This is a grant we've received in 2016 and 2018 as well. The Parks is requesting to accept the proposal of Sloan's Lawn and Landscaping for tree and plant removal not to exceed $21,485. You can see that we have 4 qualified bidders, with Sloan's Landscaping be the lowest. This project will be funded for the use of the TRIM grant, so it's entirely reimbursable. All the money will be reimbursed. This covers 60%. The TRIM grant provides 60% of a match, with additional 15%, being because we're a Tree City USA. Then our 25% is just in kind, so everything is paid for entirely. So we went out to bid because the bids exceed over $15,000 the work, and I think that really summarizes it, but I'd be happy to answer any question, and staff recommends approval of the bill.
Thank you, Cindy. Any comments from members in the chambers? Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion passed 5-0.
Thanks, Cindy.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading, Bill Number 6049, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with UniFirst Corporation pertaining to the rental of uniforms and shop towels and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading, Bill Number 6049.
We have a motion and a second and a staff report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, bids were received on October 18th, 2020 for the rental of uniforms and shop towels for utilities, parks, public works, engineering departments. The bid included an option to renew 2 additional times. Review and approval by the Board of Aldermen is required prior to entering into a renewal of the contract. An ordinance accepting the bid of the UniFirst Corporation was approved by the City Council on November 24, 2020, for a not-to-exceed amount of $21,000 for January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Staff recommends the option for the renewal with UniFirst Corporation for the rental of uniforms and shop towels for the departments aforementioned for fiscal year 2022 for January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 in the amount of not to exceed $21,000. Funds are available in the proposed fiscal year 22 Utilities, Parks, and Public Works Engineering Department budgets to cover the expense. Staff recommends approval and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions from members of the audience? Questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Bless you, Keith.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading, Bill Number 6050, an ordinance approving the addendum with Table Rock Asphalt Construction Company Incorporated for stone and hot mix asphalt and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6050.
We have a motion and a second and a report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, bids were received on September 10th, 2020 for the purchase of stone and asphalt for the fiscal year 21 in the not-to-exceed amount of $60,000. The contract is a citywide contract used by all departments. Due to the amount of waterline breaks that have been repaired this year, the estimate originally prepared in 2020 for the purchase for stone and hot mix has increased. To be prepared for incidental repairs through the remaining months of 21, a contract amendment is needed in the amount of $10,000, which will bring the total contract amount to $70,000. Funds are available in the Transportation Operating Fund. Estimates for the original contract amount of $60,000 were used from the previous year's records. The original contract followed all purchasing procedures and contract procedures. This amendment must come before the Board of Aldermen to the not-to-exceed amount exceeding $15,000. Staff recommends approval. We're glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the audience? Questions from the board?
Yes, sir. Did I get that right? This extra money is because of the water line breaks and the fixing we've had to do?
I think we've had a total of, 15, Kendall, right now? Several. It takes a lot of asphalt when it blows the road out.
You get them all fixed?
Not yet. We're
Okay.
working on them.
Our streets are becoming to look like patchwork,
Yes, they are.
like quilts out there.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion passes 5-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading, Bill Number 6051, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Algeyer, Martin and Associates Incorporated for the continuation of professional consultant services pertaining to the final engineering design of water system improvements and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading, Bill Number 6051.
We have a motion and a second, a staff report from Kendall Powell.
I'm bringing before you tonight a new contract for final engineering for our Dewey water system improvement project. This contract was originally presented on and for a first reading on May 25th of 2021 and was passed with a double read due to project timing. The notice to proceed was given to the engineer to proceed. However, the engineering was delayed due to alignment discussions between utilities and one of the property owners. There was a conflict between a proposed grading plan of the property owner's future entrance and original water main design. After discussions and agreement on the entrance design was reached, however, during this time period, the contract expired. The changes will not require any additional fees from Algeyer Martin and Associates, Inc. from what was previously approved on May 25th of 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kendall. Any questions from the audience? Questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. Your Honor, item number 15 was removed from the agenda. And so we're on Alderman Reports.
Kendall, due to time, do we need a double read on this, or can you work with this?
It would be in our best favor, or it'd be in favor of a double read, I would be anyway. It would help us keep going with this project and try to meet our deadline with that conservation property.
You okay with that, City Clerk?
Let me get back there for you. We would need a motion to read the bill for final reading. If that's the desire of the board.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and do a final read for bill number 6051.
Second?
We have a motion and a second.
And
Any
who- Sorry, second was, thank you, I'm sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any comments from anybody in the audience? Comments from the board?
And we're doing this for the same reason we did it before, to expedite the process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
That was to go ahead and move to have it on its final read. So let's motion to approve it on its final read, please. Here's your motion to approve on the final read. Do I have an alderman that would like to proceed on that motion? Alderman Skanes has done that with Alderman White a second. Discussion? Final read.
Discussion from the audience? Discussion from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Alderman C.
And we are now on reports.
So our report, starting off with Alderman Denham.
Last Saturday, I attended a Star Spangled Branson concert and fundraiser at the Hughes Family Theater. It was a beautiful tribute to our country and our Constitution, so a big thank you to the Hughes for all they do for this community. I attended the HOA meeting for Fall Creek RV Resort on September 11th, and we're all working together with the citizens and staff regarding signage, paving, and some speeding concerns they have there. And then alert for crafters and entertainment lovers. Don't forget the Autumn Days Festival in historic downtown Branson, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, behind Dick's Five and Dime, and then State of the Ozarks Fest 21 at historic Downing Street in Hollister, and that's on Saturday. And then I have a report from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting from last week on September 7th. Ms. Webster spoke regarding Country Bluff Estates, and she provided copies of a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff. It became part of the permanent record. In summary, Ms. Webster had 3 questions she asked the commission to answer. One question included 4 justification questions she wanted answers to. It was determined that the 3 main questions, which include 4 justification questions, could not be addressed at the meeting and would need to be forwarded to the Board of Aldermen. In addition, Mayor Milton asked the residents about their concerns and possible solutions. 2 answers were the 50-foot buffer, which was included in the decision of record in Taney County, reflected in the formal minutes. The other was a detention pond as required per original plan review as submitted by the applicant's engineer. The questions and requests: number 1, P&Z commissioners asked the city attorney to answer publicly the 4 questions above, which I will get to. P&Z asked the Board of Aldermen to designate as void, invalid, and unenforceable ordinance number 2020-0084, approved by Bill 20-5840, which granted zoning by way of an annexation plan of intent without a planning and zoning hearing. And number 3, P&Z asked the Board of Aldermen to request an item be placed on the P&Z Commission agenda for a public hearing for the rezoning of 3855 Fall Creek Road. And then the 4 questions that were alluded to for justification questions for our city attorney: please cite specific examples of precedent supporting the statement, "We have precedent out that says Christian and Greene counties that have unified zoning codes, there's no hearing because there's a matter of default." Number 2, please cite specific examples of case law supporting the statement because of the case law out there that says we have to respect that. Number 3, please provide the justification to ignore City Code 94-7, Articles A, B, and C, in which all 3 methods of changing zoning districts require a recommendation by the Planning Commission after notice and hearing as provided by law. And number 4, please provide the justification to ignore Missouri State Statute 89.070, which requires that planning and zoning commissioners hold public hearings before submitting its final report to the legislative body, which shall not hold the public hearing or take action until it has received the final report of such commission. The Planning Commission has requested that I provide this information to the Board of Aldermen and provide an update at the next Planning and Zoning meeting scheduled for October 7th. I'll be emailing the documents to the board and staff later this week. And I just want to thank the board in advance for your review and comments so that I can provide an update to Planning and Zoning Commission. That's it. Thank you.
Alderman Skanes.
Thank you, sir. Just to report out to the group, hopefully you got the emails that I sent out that you should have received them from the Tourism District. This year, for the latest report, they collected $1.630413. That's a lot of money, $1.6 million, versus 2019, the greatest amount that was ever received was $1.190 million. That's just remarkable out of retail. Year to date, they've collected $6.167,195, and then for 2019 was $4,902,097. Again, that's roughly $2 million collected during this time frame. I don't think any of us ever expected when we formed the tourism district that we'd be looking at that much money out of this process. But it's strong, and there's a lot of extra money. Actually, I don't know how they're going to spend it all this year. Hopefully, there's wise use for next year. The other side of this issue is to talk about is the manager's report for the Taney County Airport. Their amount of profit during the time frame is $5,365 compared to $3,103. That is the M. Graham Clark Airport, the College of the Ozarks Airport, if you want to refer to it by another name. They just got through spending $15,000 to improve the new HVAC system. As Larry and I both served on this board, it's a good group of people. The airport serves a good purpose. It's been resurfaced and relit over there, and they have been seeing record amount of activities. They also are going to be going out on the RFP with Nagler Oil and these other companies in order to get their gas prices at a reasonable amount. So those are things that Larry and I have been sticking our head in the middle of all this. Now, onto the semi-emotional side, the mayor and I have been having conversations because we had come to us a young 4-year, let me back this up. He was a Marine that served 4 years in Iraq and was getting ready to be sent out onto the road. He was going to have to sleep in the woods, and I don't think that's right for a veteran to have to do that. So we put our heads together. We made some contacts. We found the young man a place to stay. He's a computer programmer, so anybody's looking for one, he needs a job. We don't want these veterans sleeping in our woods in the area. We've got him money for food, and he's well back up on the way, but the mayor and I put our heads together, and we came up with that. And I thank the mayor, as an ex-Marine, for sticking his nose in the middle of that as well. Thanks.
No such thing as an ex-Marine, but thank you.
That's what Gibbs says, isn't it? And then the last part of it is we haven't done anything yet. But one of my best friends passed away 2 weeks ago, a man named Cedric Benoit. And he and I did 4 years of Mardi Gras in Branson. We did 10,000 people per year at that festival, which was one of the largest, if not the largest, outdoor festival Branson ever had done. He died of a heart attack. He'd been in this town for 35 years and had been quite the ambassador for Branson. So I had asked the mayor, and we're going to work on it and see if I can get him to issue a certificate for the family or a creation of a Cedric Benoit Week. He gave a lot to this community. He will be sorely missed. And I miss him already. Thanks.
I will be honored to do that. Alderman Cooper, what do you have to say tonight?
Howdy, y'all. I'm Clay Cooper.
Moving on, Alderman Fenton, can you follow that?
I don't have anything to report, but I do want to take a second and thank the staff that presented tonight, those that are here. I think you guys do a good job of helping run this city, supporting this board and giving us the information we need. So to each and every one of you sitting here or those that aren't here, I appreciate what you do. I know many others share that same sentiment, but I just wanted to take a second and you know, I like to talk, so I figured I'd hear myself for a few seconds anyways and just say truly thank you for what you do and for making our job, in my opinion, easier. So thank you.
Alderman Whitus?
I'll be like Alderman Fenton and say, I have nothing to report, but I was going to thank the staff for what they did to, what we asked them to do, and they brought back lots of good stuff for us to review, and it helped, and just thank you guys.
Alderman C?
Yeah, just reporting from this weekend here down at the landing. Was just pleased to see the turnout for the boat races, and I think all 3 days were pretty. I haven't seen it that crowded down there, and I know the truck show had a lot to do with it. And I talked with a lot of those guys down there. Love them or hate them, they bring a lot of things to Branson when they come here and stay for almost a week. And so from what I could tell, I hadn't heard any complaints, you know, if they were misbehaving or getting rowdy, but I might want to debrief with Chief Matthews before I leave here.
I got a parking lot that might say otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were burning out down there at the landing. It was pretty, but they got shut down, and their leadership is a good group, but it's tough to control them. So, anyways, that was a win for us this weekend.
Administrator Dobbins?
Just quickly, I would let you all know that if you get a chance to drive down by Compton, that our community center down there, the Parks Department is putting in a new trail that our elderly will be able to walk on, and it's going to be really awesome when it's done. And we're doing most of the work ourselves to save money, but we also got a grant for it, and it is a flood-resistant sponge-type trail that helps with knees and backs and everything else. And they've done all the groundwork, and now be coming up pretty shortly that we'll be putting down the surface on the top, and it's going to be great when it's completed. It'll be great for the neighborhood down there too. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Cindy. Just a few comments. I too want to thank the staff for addressing the board's questions. I know that took a lot of work to do that, and we all truly appreciate that. The 9/11 event down at Branson Landing, it was a very good turnout, very emotional. It was great to see the respect for our first responders, firefighters, and police. Boy, that's something we really can't forget. And as mentioned out at the fountains, the younger generation coming up, it's one thing to read about it in a history book. It's another thing to feel it and share it. That really is important for us to all recommit to never forget that. I was really touched by a lot of the citizens this past weekend. I know we're going to be going into some financial meetings here to address our shortcomings for next year. I look forward to those meetings. Appreciate the community support, and that would be it. I know we have executive session. Oh, here it is. Next item is to adjourn into executive session. The floor is open for a motion. The floor is still open for a motion.
I move to go into closed executive session pursuant to 610.021.2 RSMO for real estate.
Second.
You could do that electronically, Jamie, if you would. There you go. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion passes 6-0.
Just adjourn. Next item is to adjourn. The floor is open to adjourn the Board of Aldermen meeting. Is that Jeff and Bill? You've already done that? We have a motion, a second, please vote.
The result of the vote amazingly is 5-0.
Imagine that.
Thank you very much, and for the record, it is 8:28.
I had 39.